So Shri, where is it on YouTube? I don't see it.
You don't say. I
No,
made to go live once it starts. I checked in the
I
afternoon.
see.
It was working.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why it's not showing it. Let me ping my team and let them check. So now we'll just wait for another couple of minutes. 6:05 will start.
No problem. Take your time.
Okay, Namit, you there?
Yes.
Yes. So let's get started. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the very first webinar of Legodesk, and thank you, Namit, for agreeing to be our guest. We also have Shilpa with us as our panelist. She just joined. I'll just give her the access. Give me one sec. Shilpa, hi Shilpa. Good evening. I also gave you the access to, as the host of the meeting.
Yeah, hi. Hi, good evening.
Hi. I was just getting started. We're just, waiting for a few people to join us. So as I was saying, thank you to both of us for agreeing to be part of our first ever webinar from Legodesk. And there are obviously many more to come, and I hope to see you in the future ones as well. So the topic of today's discussion is obviously data management. And when we say data management, typically in our mind goes to whatever we read in high school, right? We only think about binary data in terms of zeros and one. No one actually realized that in this world of super connectivity, where you have hundreds of apps on your phone, you are dealing with data, a humongous amount of data on a daily basis. So obviously, when we deal with our personal data, be it images, be it a WhatsApp status or whatever, we know how to sort them, or we know which one we want to keep, which one we want to delete. Even that's also same for our paper-based data, right? Some certificates we have kept, like our graduation certificates, but let's say our sports certificate and all, they are in some corner of some almari in our homes. But when it comes to knowledge professionals such as lawyers, actually, who work on the basis of whatever is in their head, for them data is altogether another ball game. So through this webinar, we have a lot of lawyers and legal professionals joining us. We want them to educate about all these associated with data management. So now coming into introducing to Namit and Shilpa. Namit is the founder of Legal Tech. He has worked in the legal professional actively for couple of years, and then he started his own advisory, and he also writes frequently on his blog Indian Legal Tech about the current Indian legal tech industry. Shilpa is an IT professional, and after working with a lot of big law firms for almost 5 to 7 years, now she is working with Less Protector. So this is just a basic introduction. I would obviously like you both to introduce yourselves and then give your opening remarks so that we can get started.
After you, Shilpa.
Thank you so much, Namit. So, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Shilpa, and as rightly pointed out, I am an intellectual property lawyer. So, I have been practicing for more than 3 years now. And as an intellectual property lawyer, you actually, realize that how important intellectual property and other data related to that for any business, not only for lawyers, but especially for lawyers, how important it is. And I'm hoping to shed some light on the topic. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Guys, my name is Namit Oberoi. I was practicing as a dispute resolution lawyer in Mumbai, and I've practiced for about 3.5 years. That was the less interesting part of my career. After that, I now do management consulting work in the legal industry, meaning I advise lawyers and new kinds of law or legal businesses on the business side of things. So I don't do legal practice anymore. And the other role or the other hat I wear is that of a researcher. And on my blog on Indian Legal Tech, I write a lot about, like Sushri said, the state of legal technology, the sector in India, where we are coming from, where we are, and where we are going. And yeah.
Thanks, Shilpa. Thanks, Namit, for the introduction. So I'll just I'm just going to keep it very conversational, guys. All the attendees, the chat box is open, so you can ask your queries and questions whenever you have any doubts, and we will get to them as and when the discussion progresses. So Namit, this question I will direct it to you because obviously you write, as you said, you write a lot about the industry. I would start by asking you, why do you think that when I say data, be it the traditional data or this new form data that I'm talking about it, why does it specifically matters to lawyers?
Hmm. See, you've already used a few keywords to contextualize me and how to answer this question. See, the ones and the zeros that we studied in school, right? It's not that the data that you and I we are talking about, or lawyers are dealing with, or medical professionals are dealing with, that's any different. It's the same thing. It's the only thing is that it seems so disconnected to us that we cannot process one or zeros, because that seems like, wait, this is computer programming. What is this? What are bits and what are bytes? And we fail to connect that to our human lives. If you are deciding in say your day-to-day life, if you're deciding what to cook for dinner, whether you want to have rajma or paneer or roti, you're talking in data. That's data that you're transferring to each other. And ones and zeros just became a fundamental unit of how do we measure that. So before we even go to any computers or lawyers specifically, humans, if you see the human mind as an information processing machine, or as a computing machine, because you're continuously computing things, the fundamental unit of that, what you're receiving from the environment, is data in your mind, and then your mind processes it and then turns that into information. Information is data which becomes more useful and it's viewed in a certain context, which then turns into knowledge. With this, now if we go to lawyers, let's say, why is it so essential for lawyers? What in humans' lives, for example, if what we are doing on a day-to-day basis is converting data into information, into knowledge, and then making decisions, professionals like lawyers or medical professionals and doctors are doing that professionally. That's why we call them knowledge workers. So even though for a human being, the impetus to deal with that data in a structured manner and make better decisions, even even though everybody needs to do it, lawyers need to do that more professionally. Like, as a part of, to give you an example, uh, let's say there is a senior counsel being briefed by an advocate on record, and in the first or second conference, the senior counsel is wants a certain update about what the timeline of events has been. At every single point, at the fundamental level, if you look, what is going on is data transfer. Information is being transferred. And a lot of times in lawyers' lives, what we do is we make these decisions or leaps in very unstructured manner, because of which there are issues in terms of the kinds of decisions you make are, I would say, directly dependent on your hygiene of the data, how the data is stored in the lawyer's mind, as well as the collective mind of the firm. Information retrieval. If at the last moment you're standing in front of a judge and you need something, then is one lawyer 10 times faster in being able to recover that information, the right time? All of that comes from doing better data management. Does that help clarify?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, Shilpa, I'll ask you the same question. As a person who is practicing actively, who is dealing with a lot of, I'm assuming, people on a daily basis. What is your take on this? As Namit pointed out, right? How do you like ensure that whatever knowledge is in here or in papers or as an organization collectively, how do you ensure that they come out at the right moment? What is that
So,
challenge?
yeah, so as a practicing lawyer, and especially, when we deal with such a sensitive subject like intellectual property, where, someone's invention is at stake, where you just have to be very careful with everything, whatever is going around. So, as a practitioner, we have to make sure that, the communication, whatever is happening, the data which is being transferred first between the client and a lawyer, it has to be very clear. And once that is done, then only the execution part remains, that how we are, going forward with that thing. Because whenever a client is coming to you, they don't know anything. We are the guiding light for them as to how they should proceed or how they should not proceed, or how much are they going to spend on the legal matters. So everything depends on a counsel, and as a counsel, the data becomes very important for you. Because once you understand, once you get the data, you decipher that how the things are, what the situation is right now, and then which ultimately helps you in giving better, maybe, legal consultation. But other than that, as a professional, we are bound by a code. And that so as a reason of which data becomes much more important to us than in comparison to any other profession. Because you are actually dealing with sensitive data, and these data just cannot go out and just roam around or go anywhere. These are the data which are very private to someone, which may harm someone. So as a reason of which, these data are data management for lawyers. And at times like this, when everything is becoming online, every kind of hearing and everything else, right now we are completely online. So it becomes much more important than the archaic method, which used to happen, that you will go to a lawyer's office and you will see there's a bunch of files. So now I think, because of corona, or thanks to corona, we are somewhere in the transformation phase. And yeah, as a reason of which, I think for lawyers, data has always been very important. which right now I think we are realizing it more because things are going online. So yeah, I hope I have answered.
Interesting point, Shilpa. Like, in my interaction, like as part of Legodesk, I do interact with lawyers, from time to time basis. I'd not say regularly, but on a time to time basis. So, you being you, I would think for you it would have been easier to, adopt the online measures, as you said,
Correct.
move away from that archival method. But
Correct.
did you notice any drastic change in terms of that senior level of lawyers, who are like 40, 45 plus, not even 40, 45, because they are somehow also adaptable in some senses, but let's say people who were like literally, doing everything paper based. So how did this data manage, data management apply to them? Because as you very rightfully pointed out, right, and Namit
Hmm.
also said that everything that you need at that time, you need to have it in
Mm-hmm.
front of you.
Correct.
So let's say
Correct.
there is a archival things happening around in your office. How did they deal with that earlier? And now that it's slowly transitioned to online, how are they dealing with the transition? So I guess my questions in two parts, but yeah.
Yeah, so when the pandemic hit, it was like, do or die situation. We did not have, nobody would have foreseen it that something like this is going to happen, that courts are going to close. So, as a community, I think as a fraternity, a legal fraternity, of course, went through a drastic change because everything we knew, everything we used to do just suddenly changed. And of course everything became online. At first it was very difficult, not for not for me as you rightly pointed out, because in intellectual property I think most of the things happen online. But yeah, as a fraternity, of course things changed. All the hearings became online. It became it became good for us in a way that when you have to go for a hearing to a certain to a certain other place, to a registry, for example, you have to go to a registry in Chennai, so you have to travel. So traveling time, it saved, which in turn saved the client's money. But of course, it's a very welcoming change, which we are seeing right now. Everything becoming online. It's saving a lot of time. The change was, of course, unforeseen. That's why it was sudden. It was drastic to a certain extent. But I think we are coping up with it right now, and yeah, so far so good. And hoping to, I really hope that. Legal fraternity still needs to see more online changes. It has to see more changes. It is seeing changes, but this change was sort of forced upon us, not that we intentionally did it. But yeah, the change is good, and the change is here to stay.
Namit, as you said, right, I am not going to say that you write about it or you know about it. As you very right well said, you research about this thing, right? So, what is your take? Like, what do you see? How did the transition happen, or what is the general consensus among those legal professionals right now in terms of going online, or handling their data online?
Hmm. So, Sushri, summarize your question. Are you talking about
Uh,
the
I, I,
transition?
I,
Yeah, yeah.
I'll reconstruct a little bit. So, as I was asking Shilpa, right? Let's say someone is like 50, 55-year-old professional legal lawyer, basically, who has always acted, people have come to his office, come to his chambers, and he has talked to them, and then he done that. And right now, at least, obviously, the legal system didn't stop when COVID stopped the entire life thing, and now they had to deal with WhatsApp. I literally knew people like my father's friends and all my father's friends who are lawyers and all. They used to have their phone and they used to like taka taka taka, they used to do and check their WhatsApp if they received some attachment or something. And I was at home at that time, so my neighbor, who is a reputed lawyer back in Odisha, he also used to ask me, can you download it for me? Because in phones it comes as a PDF, and there is not that arrow that to download is very small. and once you download it, where it's stored, it's another thing, right? So it's just, I'm just giving you one, use case kind of, you can say. So that is what my experience was. But as you research about the industry, how do you think that the shift happened in the legal industry? Like, obviously it was forced, but how was it, and how has it impacted the overall system for now?
Hmm. Okay, I have multiple points, so I think I might need, Shilpa, I might steal some of your time here.
Please go ahead.
First is I think we give the pandemic too much credit, because from the last 6 to 8 months to 10 months, whenever I do feel whether we're talking about digitization or paperlessness or ways in working, we we tend to think that COVID is what has caused it. No, because of COVID, it's just become, the problems have scaled. The problems have already always existed. What was the problem? The problem was that in a non-digital world, the same data exists, and even now in a digital world, the data is exactly the same, right? Because the amount of information being created in the world doesn't change. The amount of information doesn't change because of a pandemic.
Right.
It's just that because when we went online, the internet and the connectivity, it gave us a way. Whenever you go online or digitize thing, then it unlocks a whole new plane of possibilities for that data. I'll give you an example. Let's go back to 2005. Okay, so Shri, say you and I are having a conversation on WhatsApp. Okay, and we're talking about something, some random issue, and you say something, and I say, Sushri, this is a beautiful idea. You should write a book about it. Say,
Hmm.
what are you going to do? This is not WhatsApp, by the way. This is you and I, we're talking. Okay. At that point, do you have a way to remind your future self that I needed to come back and, okay, wait, that was an idea? No, you would go to the paper, you would write it, and will you then have the time or the date or the hygiene or the organization to be able to go back and archive it so that you can later recover it? No. But the same conversation, when that now goes to WhatsApp, now you can star a message. If it goes on Slack or Microsoft Teams,
Hmm.
the same amount of information, you can go ahead and you can probably put that in a table, and you can name that table Book Ideas for Sushri. In future, when I'm thinking about what do I want to write a book about, it's going to take me 5 seconds because I will know exactly where it is. That's what has changed in the world. It has become so much easier for us to do some really powerful things with the same information that we have always had. Because of events like COVID, what happens is that now, like, I had a conversation with a client some time back, I think around the pandemic, and we were discussing how, especially with lawyers, logic is never going to win. Whether, even if you're a legal technology company, let's say you are showing, I can be a little harsh. I'll just be myself. If you're a legal technology company and trying to give the potential of a certain tool to a lawyer and saying this is what it can do for you, that conversation is going to be very different. It's going to be a little difficult because a lot of barriers, logical barriers that you have to cross. Not to say that you don't have the logical soundness. It's just that the conversation becomes a little more difficult. Because of the pandemic, what happens is primarily from logic, it becomes an emotional, fear based thing. Because now you get down to survival. And that is a change.
Hmm.
Now, what do you do if in your environment the courts are adapting, the high courts are adapting, and now you're sitting in Bhopal and you're making an appearance before the Supreme Court of India? That's cultural, cultural and social change, right?
Hmm.
So that's what has happened, and because of which we are now much more likely to talk about things like data, which have already existed before. Second, which is, so this is me, and I hope that this is me, that I've answered your question here. Another ancillary point I was making is that one trend that I have seen is that, see, if you see the journey of how a lawyer becomes a lawyer, the kind of examples and the inspirations that we have are always people who are 50 plus.
Yeah. Hmm.
In a lawyer's mind, in a young lawyer's mind, The examples that we have about, oh, who do we want to be, what do we want to become, okay, oh my god, that firm is amazing, okay, tier one firm, and this council, so on and so forth. Because those examples are there, later when we're talking about stuff like technology, large cultural change, we make the mistake of starting from the 50-55-year-old people and we start optimizing for them. But the
Absolutely.
truth is, when I was using Facebook in 2008, my mom and dad used to shout at me, say, what are you doing with your time? Go study algebra or whatever, right? Today, when I go back home, I find that I am probably reading or listening to an audiobook, and it's my dad and my mom who are glued to Facebook, and I have to say that, what are you guys doing with your time?
Hmm.
Right? What does that tell us? That this age group is probably the last adopter.
Yeah.
So when we are talking about a change, bringing a change which is something so new in our world, we don't necessarily need to look to the 50-55-year-old or 60-year-old people in seeing how they optimize their solutions or how they optimize their working. A much better way is to see people between 25 to 35, 25 to 45, and say, and see the tools that they already use, and just give them a context saying, oh, you can apply exactly the same logic in your practice. And at
Hmm.
that point, I think the conversation, the quality of the conversation improves a lot more, because there's a lot more engagement from those lawyers, because they are using the same tools that you and I are using. Make
That's an interesting point of view, Namit. But then I would ask you the next question is like, then in terms of that age group that you are talking about, who are the early adopters, like you, as you said, 25 to 45, or let's plus or minus 5. So for them, how much data preparedness is there? Like, do you think that they are technologically capable of doing whatever is required to adopt that into their practice? Because so far we have been talking about WhatsApp or Facebook, but to be really honest, WhatsApp is Facebook is more like personal thing, right? When it comes to professional things, uh, they need to incorporate other kinds of things as well, like like Drive per se, or email per se, or Dropbox per se. So do you think that they have that kind of data preparedness?
that's a fantastic point, because it orients me and brings me to a central point. Yes, that is the core reason. That is the core reason. The reason why there's better adoption is because there's more data preparedness, um, there's more readiness, they are more aware. For them, it's not walking into an entirely new utopian world,
Hmm.
right? And about the personal and professional, they're not separate things. That's not how we are making decisions. That's not how we're making decisions. Our groups with our teams are going on WhatsApp, right? Why?
Yeah.
Before adapting WhatsApp on work, did we make a rational decision and have a 30-minute meeting on the pros and cons of WhatsApp? No. We adopted it because we knew it. And it was so easy. We went behind experience and usability, and then we ended up adopting it. When that user grows on his or her maturity with communication tools, the person might realize that, wait, there are a lot of essential features which are missing in WhatsApp. One. Two, now the personal and professional mix is actually bothering me. When I'm talking to my wife, my client is seeing me online.
Hmm.
These small little irks are going to then force that person to go on other I'm just taking an example, like Slack or Discord or Teams or wherever you work. So the personal professional uh, confluence is very essential, and that is what that age group has, which is why they're more data prepared.
But do you think, like, let's say, I'm sorry, Shilpa, it's not like, I'm trying to, go away from you, but as Namit is, I'm just asking questions. Please feel free to jump in and answer anything that you feel, requires your point of view. Now, so Namit, what I was thinking is like, in my mind, at least whenever you talk about technology, I am thinking about a lawyer, who is wearing suit and boot, typical जैसे movie में दिखाते हैं, who has a smartphone probably, or but what about all those people who literally, छाता open करके कोर्ट के सामने बैठते हैं? How are they going to transition that, like for them, as I said, right, the neighbor I gave example of, that uncle, he's a reputed lawyer. It's not like he doesn't have a smartphone. It's just that for him, he will, maybe he right now he has known how to deal with emails or WhatsApp, but when it comes to, like, let's say, as you pointed out, right, Slack or any other communication channels that are being in practice by corporates a lot now, what about them? What about that digital divide that is happening there?
See, that digital divide is not unique to our profession or our
That's
time.
right.
It's there in every profession, it's there in every fraction of human society, and that is always going to exist. I believe that it would be a mistake for us to go and start the conversation. Okay, imagine in a society, there are, let's see, on a spectrum of adoption, there are people who are very early adopters, right? In a tool's alpha version, they are there. And then there are people, let's say, who come and they're using Facebook, let's say, after 20 years of, like, it's almost dead, right? On one end are the innovators or people trying to drive change and saying, guys, these are the best practices, these are best experiences, this is how you can improve your productivity, this is how you can improve your profitability. Do you think it would be, who should be the first people that that person should start having a conversation with? Their fathers, their grandfathers? No. They should probably have a conversation with their own peers, and if they can relate on age, style, cultural preferences, social preferences, etc., then at that point, that is how you kick off a network. The way you start kick off a network is by first going to people who are already using those ways. It's not alien to them. They apply that, and then they become examples. And when at some point of 45, 50, even 45 is young, I feel, um, um, say a senior lawyer who's not used to this, or he or she thinks that I don't have the time to learn all this, yeah,
Hmm.
that person needs to see an example. It cannot be a theoretical intellectual discussion with them, it needs to be more experiential. And that is why that digital divide, in my opinion, the way we break it is by first going to those people. For example, let's say there's a mom, 34-year-old, works on her MacBook and works in pajamas, right? And her life is chill, how she has work life balance, and she's managing her entire practice on her MacBook.
Hmm.
She's probably the right person, because otherwise the innovators are going to get drained of the energy. They'll be like, what is this market I'm getting out of here? I'm going to do something in fintech.
Hmm. I'm just trying to, digest the information. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. So now coming on to Shilpa. Shilpa, you have any thoughts on that digital divide point that we talked about, or do you like majorly agree with Namit?
Some part of it, of course, I agree with Namit, but I also feel that once this happened, the digital divide, of course, as Namit rightly pointed out, it will always be there. You cannot expect the whole community or everyone to, adapt something to something which they are not used to. But I think right now, whatever I'm seeing is people are adapting. It's not like, there are of course will be people who will say that, I don't have time to learn Zoom, I don't have time to, do this online, this can be done offline. When it will be offline, I'll do it back then. But now, because this has come to survival, that when things are happening, that you have to do, or you don't do, you die. So it is now becoming a question of survival. And since it has become a question of survival, people are learning. So there are senior lawyers who, of course, used to do things in a old format, which is changing right now because of the current situation, which I think already existed, which everyone knew, but because the old whatever was happening, everyone was so comfortable with it, it was not changing. But right now, I think people or lawyers are adapting to online changes, and it is happening. It might be slow. It might take some more time than, in comparison to other industries, but it is happening.
So Shilpa, as you deal with all these copyright related info, data and matters in your professional life, so
Yes.
how do you think the elephant in the room, the security part applies here, and how do you think that basically what do you recommend to your clients when it comes to that, sharing stuff over online and all that? How do you deal with clients on that context?
Well, right now, because everyone is online, or everyone is trying to go online. Whoever was not online is thinking of going online. Whoever is starting a business new is thinking that I should start online, because everything is becoming online is more feasible. People are preferring not to go out, or if they can do something online, all of us prefer not to even go out and buy groceries. We have people who are just buying it for us and delivering it to us. So right now, as an IP lawyer, I think intellectual property is at high risk, and all the business entity have intellectual property, whether they recognize it, they don't recognize it, but every business entity has some or the other intellectual property. And because of the fact that we are online, we are vulnerable. We are very, very vulnerable right now, and because data is online, it's just available to everyone. So your infringer can be sitting somewhere in Bangladesh or Pakistan or Africa or North Korea. I don't know. I'm just giving an example. But infringer can be sitting anywhere in the world, and they can, copy. So right now, because, and they can copy it, and ultimately you are the one who is in a disadvantageous position, because you didn't foresee it, or you didn't think that this can be a problem later on. So right now, what we as IP lawyers suggest, that to our clients, that be very particular whenever you are sharing any kind of information with anyone, because uh, data is very sensitive, and especially when you start a business. So whenever you are starting with any kind of business, be very, very particular with whom you are sharing what kind of information. So what happens in our field is that if for example, I'm just giving you an example, I come up with something new, and I'm talking to you, you're my friend. I'm just discussing this with you, that hey, you know what, I'm thinking that I'll just make a new product, and I have thought of this. What do you think? Now, because I told this to you, I just said this to you, there is no harm. You are a friend. I trust you. So what you did, you went ahead, you made this. This was my idea. You made this. You come up with this. You got the intellectual property, and you got certain kind of monetary benefit out of that also. Whereas me, because it was just my idea, and ideas are not protected in any kind of, under any law. So I am the one who is actually suffering, whereas I should be the one who should get the credit, because I came up with the idea. So right now, as a IP lawyer, what we suggest to our client, that whenever you are even thinking about something, you are thinking about coming up with something, you have thought of it, or you have made a plan. Make sure that everything is protected. You don't go ahead and speak to anyone about it, or you write a blog on a on a network like Facebook or Instagram, and say that I have come up with this thing, and this is going to be very amazing. So don't do that. Right now, everyone has to be very, very particular about whatever they are coming up with, because we are very, very vulnerable, because everything is online and everyone is online. And right now, I think internet is something which is so much readily available to everyone. It becomes, we are much more vulnerable than what we used to be pre-COVID. So yeah, that's what we suggest, that be very careful whenever you are sharing any kind of information.
Namit, coming to you on a similar context, like Shilpa gave us a point of view from a very intellectual property point of view, right? From you, I want a more common point of view. Like, let's say I am filing for divorce and I do have some asset associated with it. I'm exploring my options now, per se. And you are my lawyer, and I got in touch with you, and we, exchanged messages and all that. uh, so when it comes to that, and someone reads the lawyer's messages, let's say the lawyer's someone in the family, and the message goes out, then obviously it is going to impact the client in a long way, because the as I said, right, initially I was just discussing, and in the attorney client privilege, I was just talking to my lawyer in that context. So in this regard, as Shilpa pointed out, Facebook and Instagram, they are open platforms. But when I'm talking to my lawyer, obviously I'm talking to him in a little secured environment like WhatsApp, whatever. So in that context, when it comes to data management, having everything online, as you pointed out, marking it as a star and coming back to it later, how does it affect the clients in the long run? Like, obviously there are two sides to every coin, but in this context, let's say there is a very sensitive matter. How does this whole online thing affects the clients? So I
See,
basically I want
mhm.
both the positive and the negative point of view from your end.
See, first thing is these are two entirely separate discussions, because the first one is about how a lawyer or an advocate uses the building blocks of life, data, bits, to be able to improve the way he or she works, the way he or she adds value to society, improves their own quality of life, and improves their clients' quality of life, right? S- That is not a legal question. The only commonality between that and cybersecurity for lawyers is that the person we are talking about, only the subject is a lawyer. That's it.
Very very
But
good
the
point. Yeah.
but the difference is that, for like when I say, for example, when you say data management for for lawyers, I differentiate it from data management for clients by lawyers. These are two different
Hmm.
points, right? The first one is technology, the second one is legal. The first one is legal technology, the second one is technology law, right? So I feel it is crucial for us in our discourse, not just here on the webinar, even otherwise. It's very important for us to be able to distinguish when we are talking about technology which can improve the legal sector, the state of the sector, the professionals, which will then improve the client. So at that point, we are talking about benefits like efficiency, reduced risk, not just security risk, even otherwise. And when we go to the question of preserving intellectual property, then that becomes a legal question, right? So first, there needs to be a clear demarcation, because I'm talking about the first one here. At least that's what I understand from topic and the general theme. Second, there is still, in the interest of the webinar, I'll still try and draw some alignment here. And then I think, Sushri, you can choose which direction we go to, because there are not many meeting points. Okay.
Hmm.
The commonality is that if a lawyer, if an advocate, it's one thing to take an oath and say, I will protect my client's interest. But it is another thing if you take an oath, but you don't have any means to be able to protect your client's interest. Intentions that, no, I'm a noble, virtuous lawyer, and I'm always looking after my clients. That's not going to cut it. You need the ability. Intention is not enough. You need the ability to actually be able to engineer what you want to engineer for your clients, right? That will not happen if intuitively a lawyer is not practicing knowledge management in their own lives. Because if your personal life is a mess in terms of where information is scattered, where knowledge is scattered, let's say you are forgetful, let's say you forget things, right? And after that, you have no means of being able to retrieve that information. It's the same behavior that is going to reflect in your culture, in your organization, and that will, even from a security standpoint, it will become a risk because it's an implicit bias that you have. Not bias, but it's an implicit behavior that you have. So let's say I am dealing with highly sensitive data, right? I'm talking about, say, I don't know, like large scale, highly sensitive data. At that point, what lawyers are bringing are not just their tools that, okay, we are using A grade security, or there can be, we have this virtual data room, etc. It's not just that. It's the person, it's the lawyer's mind behind it who's engineering and saying that, okay, have we left any stone unturned to make sure that there is no leakage? So security, cybersecurity then just becomes one manifestation of a lawyer's own organization and management of the information and knowledge, which transcends from personal to business to practice and then to their clients. But that said, I will close with saying that, Sushi, I mean, like I would need to be in a different mindset to speak about, the legality of the, no, the legal aspects of how you manage it.
No, I get it what you're trying to say. Yeah, that is maybe, that can be the second topic of our webinar per se. But yeah, so any closing remarks, Namit, Shilpa, because it's already 6:50 and I want to take a few questions from the attendees. So any closing remarks on uh, uh, from the discussion? Yeah, data management and all is absolutely necessary, but any key takeaways or two or three tips for everyone who has joined us in the for the webinar today? Shilpa?
For all the attendees, I'm assuming that we have advocates with us. So for the advocates, from advocates' point of view, of course, with the changes, whatever is happening, data management has become very, very important. Not only for lawyers, but also, when it comes to between a client and a lawyer, and for lawyers in their practice as well. So I think it's high time that we transition ourselves into more serious data management, because whatever change has begun, it is here to stay. And these changes are, whether we like it or not, it's here to stay. So yeah, it's high time that we as a fraternity take it more seriously and start working on it.
Namit?
So Sushi, can you summarize the question again? I got distracted by the question.
Yeah, so what I
Abhishek's
was
question.
saying is, obviously all the professionals that have joined us in the evening, they need to practice data management. So I was just asking if you had any key takeaways or anything that you want them to take away from this discussion.
Hmm. See, I would start saying that first, this is a very long journey. It's a very personal journey, and this is a journey of doing more with what you have. What you have is information, right? If you're a knowledge worker, your commodity, what you're trading in, is knowledge, right? And knowledge is built from data. So that's, for a lawyer, that's the food, that's the daily, uh, bread and butter. Now, in order to be able to go on this path, what really is required is that overnight you are not going to become some data wizard. It's going to come with small little things in your profession, in your work life. For example, how are you storing your expenses? Is there a way that your staff can use an extremely easy way where they don't have to apply their minds and just fill a form in order to, for example, be able to capture that information? But on the back end, the people who actually know, who are using that data, they still have the complexity and the structure behind it? Is there a way? And similarly, for instance, let's say there are client updates that need to be sent out, right? No matter if you are dependent on willpower, the culture in your organization will always be very judgmental about those people who, say, for example, are not able to do this, or let's say who are forgetful. So, can you build a culture where you can use technology's help to be able to automate? If not automate the entire process, can you send some automations to remind the person who's responsible for this, so that client service improves? Small little things and small little use cases, and then you would think of them, then you would go out, Google is your friend, and then you would see how are other lawyers making this more efficient. And over time this will build a culture where 10 years, 15 years down the line, maybe even that is too long, like I haven't been around in the industry for 10, 15 years, but I do think intuitively in terms of data structures, in terms of when I see the world in terms of data structures, if I see my law practice in terms of data structures, then I can start to put some delegations, some algorithms to build workflows, so that even I and my fellow lawyers can actually focus on reading arguments, right? So so I think those are small little things that we can start doing, lower our expectations, start humanizing this, start adopting data as a very essential, it's not very alien. Because when you see, for example, a recipe is a form of data, information, right? What are you going to have for dinner? That's information. If every single day the person who's cooking food for you is asking the same question and you're getting irritated, no, I don't know I don't know, make anything. That is one annoyance that has existed with you for decades. That's unstructured data. Can you apply this philosophy in trying to structure that a little bit so that you don't have those arguments with somebody? So I feel that's what. So two takeaways: lowering expectations and coming up with small use cases, and then learning. And second, in my opinion, there is really no difference between personal and business and practice. The change has to be more uh, omnipresent.
Great, great. Thank you both for your like closing remarks. I have three questions here. So, Shilpa, the first is for you. Shilpa, you're on mute.
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
In
yeah.
this age, when the value is captured in information, how do you think the modern enterprises are dealing with IP management to leverage their growth, and how does it also apply to global organizations who are situated across geographical boundaries?
Okay, so there are various ways in which you can protect how this information is. Again, it depends on how the information is captured, in which format, or in which way this information is captured. So if this is a very sensitive information, or is a business model you are working on with someone, then these can be captured under many intellectual properties. Like it can be captured under NDAs. It can be captured under uh, any other kind of intellectual property, suppose patent. So it depends on which format or how this information are captured. And then it can be seen how, going ahead, what kind of intellectual property suits best, or what is the best intellectual property and how you can protect it. How the global organization are taking it across boundaries. Well, all the intellectual properties are territorial in nature. So it's not like, if you have a certain kind of information. Suppose you have made a new software, and with this software you are, suppose, solving some kind of problem which existed before. So for example, WhatsApp. So you made a new application, mobile application or software, WhatsApp. Now, this is an app which needs to be protected in the particular jurisdiction where it will get a protection. If you will find a software patent in India, it's hard to get. It will, of course, get registered. It depends on the patent agent and everything. That's very technical. But again, how the global organization take it is that they have very strong and robust plan when it comes to IP management. They look at the jurisdiction where it will be suitable for them going ahead in protecting the particular kind of intellectual property. What is what is their reach, what is the kind of market they're looking at, and taking all these things into consideration, they then start taking steps. So if I give you an example of Byju's started small, but then they started growing very steadily. So when they started growing, the first thing which they did was protecting whatever intellectual properties they have across the border, wherever they have clients, or wherever whichever students they are currently, whichever countries the student belong to. So, for example, Byju's is an Indian company. They could have, easily thought that, okay, my trademark and my patents and my softwares are protected in India. I don't want to go ahead and protect it in somewhere else. But what they did is, before going global or before becoming a global organization, they started getting the intellectual property registered in those particular countries. Right now, they have filed their trademark in more than 50 countries. So that's how you strategize, that's how you plan before going ahead. And that's how, big organization like Facebook, Google, Coca-Cola have been doing it. And that's how they protect the intellectual property. So yeah, I hope I have answered.
Thanks, Shilpa. The next question is for you, Namit. How do corporates deal with data security and accessibility? This is from Mohan.
Hmm. Mohan, I think I'm between the three of us, I feel that I'm not the best person to answer this question because, like I said, I like there are 2 points of different, the two reasons why I can't answer the question. One, the corporates that I deal with, or I have dealt with, or the businesses I've dealt with, are either law practices or they are small businesses, but more or less in professional services sector, right? Accountants, CAs, lawyers, etc. So as I like, my consulting work is more focused on understanding specifically how professionals, how expertise is traded in society. And that is something I think it would be unfair for me to take that context and extrapolate over on large uh, enterprises. And the second reason is in terms of the subject as well: cybersecurity, data security, in managing managing your information, that has a certain legal aspect to it. And I think that Shilpa may be the better person to address this.
Shilpa, you want to take this one? How do corporates deal with data security and accessibility?
Well, again, I don't think even I am the right person to answer such questions. But what I presume, or what might happen, again, I can answer on that basis. That will be a very bookish answer. I think data security is very important as of now for big companies. So what I believe is, big companies have their own set of laptops which they provide to their, employees. And just because, they don't want those kind of data to go outside, because, because the work from home things happen. And so they are sort of adapting right now. They have always adapted, but these kind of, they have their own kind of mechanism to cope with it, that they they keep data security, they give data security utmost importance. So yeah, this is one of the tool how they do it. Whenever they provide laptops to their employees, they make sure that you can't take away any data from the laptop which the office has provided, or that's on the employee point of view. And for others who they work with, also they have very strong NDAs at place. But again, data is something which doesn't matter how strong the NDA is, can protect. But other than the NDA, they have also other legal measures how they make sure that there is no dissemination of data. So, what will be the tools? I don't think even I'm the right person to answer that. But yeah, it's a very bookish, straightforward answer which I'm giving, that NDAs and certain other measures how you can protect it. They must be doing that.
So I
You
mean,
know,
I would.
I'll add to that in terms of, this is not an answer specifically for data security, but for example, what Shilpa just mentioned, that's curative in nature, right? Like what
Right.
happens in case there is a breach? What do we do in terms of prevention? Now, again, I want to say this again, that my uh, what I'm saying is going to be colored because my context is coming from dealing with small businesses or professional services or practices. So that's the caveat for you, that it's going to have that little bit of color. The challenge really is that how do you build workflows that don't let that happen in the first place? And one primary way of doing that is to understand that everybody in the organization is handling data with different degrees of complexity, right? A CEO, for example, may be able to go through all of the financial statements and may just need 25 minutes with it. But a clerk or a peon who is filing and say expense, who's lodging an expense, cannot deal with that system. So what happens if you do not take the care of building a workflow for them? One, there is discord in the office, right? There is, first you feel like, oh my god, you're such an idiot, you can't even do this, and that's totally unnecessary. You need to design that solution with that person in mind and seeing that person's use case in mind, right? And what happens if you end up designing, like, say, one system and only one context, right? Let's say it's a large database, and your clerks are also working on there, your associates are also working there, and your senior partners are also working there. The chances that some information will get leaked from the repository become much higher when there are people who don't even need access, there is information overload, are given access. There is nobody who's benefiting from it. So I think it's very crucial to understand who needs what level of access, and then being very conscious about what kind of workflows and what kind of experience we are building for that particular person.
Sure. Actually, I was going to ask you, Namit, like from, as you said, you dealt with small businesses and law firms. I wanted your answer from that perspective, but yeah, you articulated it and provided it already. So yeah, it's already we are like 7 minutes over our time. So I would let you both go because it's a Saturday evening, and thank you both for joining us on a Saturday evening. And yeah, I look forward to invite you both for our as our panelists in our next webinars as well. And thank you so much, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Sushri, for
Thank
having
you.
me. Thanks,
Thank you.
Shilpa.
Thank
Thanks,
you so
everyone.
much. Thank you, Namit. Thank you, Sushri. Thank you so much.
Bye, Shilpa. Bye, Naman.
Bye.
Thank you. Thanks to all the attendees, and giving us 1 hour of your time on a Saturday evening.
Thank you. Bye bye.
And yeah, that's all. Abhishek, Sushi, Arijita, right? So after